name is Kim. I'm a parent volunteer with our marching band program. I'm here today to talk to you about hemming our color guard flags when they come to us unfinished. First, thank you so much for volunteering to help us with this project. When we order our flags unfinished, it saves us a bunch of money, and so it makes our budget for the season go further. So thank you for donating your time to help us with this project. Feel free to pause or rewind this video as needed, and if you have any questions, go ahead and reach out to the parent volunteer in charge of this project or to our bandstanders organization. Thank you. Let's start with a quick explanation of the anatomy of a color guard flag so you know what you'll be working with. There are different styles of color guard flags that have different shapes, but all of them have things in common for our finishing purposes. They all have outside edges that include a 1/2 inch hem allowance, and they all have a pole side that includes 2 3/4 inches of fabric to create a pole pocket along that pole edge. What are the differences? The rectangle or curved rectangle flags have 3 outside edges to hem, no curves or less dramatic curves, and more corners. The curved tail or curved point flags have only 2 outside edges to hem, but they have much more dramatic curves and sharper points that can prove a little trickier as you're working with them. Our unfinished flags for our school's program, we use a zigzag stitch and a straight stitch combination to really lock those stitches in place so they can hold up to the heavy wear and tear out on the fields. I'm going to start by showing you on a piece of paper what that stitch combination is like so you can see it a little easier. Some of the flags come with the seam allowance lines printed on them. If they are there, use those. Otherwise, the hem allowance is a 1/2 inch, which is a 1/4 inch rolled twice. So you're going to roll the raw edge in a 1/4 inch and then roll that edge under another 1/4 inch so you have a nice clean edge. For this demonstration on paper, I'm going to exaggerate this hem size so that you can see better. But just imagine that this is a 1/4 inch double rolled hem. Now, when we are sewing our flags at home, we're going to do something to start that feels really backwards about how you normally sew a hem or a seam on a project. Again, feel free to pause and rewind as needed to understand these instructions. Ordinarily, you start with your project off toward the left of your machine, and the edge you're sewing will be on your right. But we are going to start with our project the opposite way. We're going to start with the flag fabric on the right-hand side, and the edge we are sewing along is going to be on our left-hand side. Also, ordinarily, you start with your needle at the top of the project, and you feed your project through the machine to the bottom of the seam. But we are going to start with our needle about 1.5 inches or so from the bottom edge of our hem. So here you're starting a 1/2 inch, 2 inches maybe from the bottom of the seam. Your hem is rolled under your presser foot, your needle is down. You're starting with a straight stitch. Lock your stitch in to start with a few back stitches, then stitch forward a little ways before you put in a few more back stitches over the top. Now forward again, then a few more back stitches, all the way until you get to the bottom of the hem. Here you're going to leave your needle down, bring your presser foot up, and now you're going to turn your project 180 degrees so that it's facing the way you would normally be sewing a hem. Now your finished edge is on the right and your project is on the left, and your needle is at the top of your hem. Put your presser foot back down. Now you're going to switch your machine to a zigzag stitch, and you're going to zigzag across this hem all the way down to the bottom of the seam. Once you get to the bottom, leave your presser foot down, turn your project 180 degrees so that the flag is now on your right-hand side and your finished edge is on the left. Put your presser foot back down. Switch your stitch back to a straight stitch. And now you're going to sew with that straight stitch for another 1.5 inches or so, using that same forward-backward technique that we used at the beginning to really secure that line of stitching. Once you've gone that 1.5 or 2 inches of straight stitching, give yourself a good back and forth to secure that edge, and you're done with that edge. You're going to do this on the 2 or 3 edges, depending on the style of the flag you're working on, that need to be hemmed. Don't worry about the pole pocket at this point. It does not need to be hemmed. Once you've hemmed the outside flag edges, now we're ready to talk about the pole side of your flag. We're going to create a pole pocket or pole sleeve along this side. For the pole pocket, you're going to take that raw edge along the pole side and turn it under 1/4 inch. Now you have a nice clean edge along that side. You want to turn this edge another 2.5 inches. This is long and really kind of needs to be relatively precise. So I suggest measuring and pinning this whole edge. And now you're ready to sew it down. And you're going to start at the top of this seam. Set your machine to your zigzag stitch. Lock that stitch in real good at the top and then stitch it down, zigzagging the whole way to the bottom. Once you reach the bottom, leave your needle down, bring your presser foot up, turn the project 180 degrees, put your presser foot back down, switch your machine to a straight stitch, and straight stitch over that zigzag stitch all the way back down to the other end. Secure it really well at the end with some back stitching, and you're all done. Okay, so now that we've seen what it looks like on paper, we're going to take it to the sewing machine with an actual unfinished flag, and we're going to see how we do this with an actual flag. So I have my hem rolled about 1/4 inch twice there, so I've got my hem doubled over. I'm going to stick it under my machine, and I'm going to start about 1.5 to 2 inches from the bottom edge. I'm going to lower my presser foot, put my needle down. I've got my machine set to a straight stitch, and I'm going to go forward and backward, trying to really lock that stitch in the whole way down. So I'm going forward, backward, forward, backward, forward, and backward until I get to the bottom. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise my presser foot, turn the whole project around to the other side. It's a 180-degree turn there. Now my project is set the way I'm used to hemming a seam. I've got my project on the left-hand side. I've got my edge here on the right-hand side. I'm going to put my presser foot back down. Now I'm going to change my machine to a zigzag stitch. And I'm going to zigzag now the whole way down this seam. Okay, so now when you get down at the bottom, I'm gonna go a little bit further here. Once you get down towards the bottom here, you're gonna leave your needle down, put your presser foot up, and turn your project back the other way. Now you're gonna do the reverse of what you did at the top. You're gonna go back to your straight stitch. So my presser foot is down, I'm switching back to my straight stitch, and I'm gonna go about 1 inch or 1.5 inches forward and backward, doing that forward backward thing we did earlier. Just to really lock those last few stitches in place. Once I get to the end, I go backwards, forwards, lock myself in place, cut my thread, and that edge is stitched. So that whole edge there is hemmed. At this point, I'm down at the tail on this one. I'm gonna tuck this. I'm gonna turn it under again, and I'm gonna start the same way we started before. I'm gonna start up here. I'm gonna do a straight stitch up to the edge, zigzag back all the way to the other end. And that's how you're gonna put the hem on these flags. All right, so now we're gonna work on the pole pocket or the pole sleeve. So for this, you've turned it under 1/4 inch on the raw edge for that pole side of the flag. And then you're gonna turn it under another 2.5 inches. So you'll see I have my 1/4 inch raw edge turned under, and then another 2.5 inches turned under again. Then I like to pin it the whole way. I just think it stays more stable as I'm working on it. It tends to slide around a little bit. So now you're gonna start up at the top, and I'm gonna set it to a zigzag stitch. I like about a 2.5 stitch length on this. And now I'm gonna put it down, And I'm gonna zigzag stitch along this whole edge right here until I get to the bottom. All right, once I get to the end over here, I'm going to raise my presser foot, turn the project around on my machine, put my presser foot down and go back to a straight stitch. And now I'm gonna straight stitch over top of these zigzag stitches the whole way back to the other end. This end, I'm gonna back stitch, lock everything in nice and tight, trim it up, and it's done. Any little threads and stuff, you can trim off any excess, but the hem is done the whole way around, and the rod sleeve is in place. You can stick the pole right through there. Let's talk tips and tricks. Tip number 1, beware of that high heat on your iron. Our flags are almost always made out of polyester or nylon, and they are really sensitive to high heat. So if you do decide to press the edges or any part of the flag, go ahead and use a low heat setting on your iron, and if you have a pressing cloth, use that. Tip number 2, our curved pointed or curved tail flags tend to be the most challenging to hem. That's because the curves are so dramatic. If you've ever hemmed a circle skirt, you understand. So if you're sewing these outside curves along the top of the flag, you may find that as you roll along, you can't avoid some puckers or tucks or wrinkles in the hem. Just finesse it the best you can as you go. Try to spread any tucks you can't avoid into smaller tucks over more space if you can. We just really want to make sure all those unfinished edges are rolled under. Then down here at the bottom of the curve point flags, you have the opposite problem. On this edge, you tend to have too little fabric to accomplish a consistent 1/4 inch rolled hem. So again, you're gonna finesse this the very best that you can, but in this case, you usually need to make your hem a little narrower in the tight curves. When you hit these challenging curves, just go slow and let the fabric do what it needs to do to get as clean and consistent a hem as you can. It's not gonna be perfect every time, just do your best. Tip number 3, go ahead and tuck that tail. If you're working on these curved point or curved tail flags, those have these sharp points at the end. You're gonna get the best finish if you tuck this unfinished point in at the very edge when you're working on that corner. Tip number 4, if you're a confident seamstress, you don't have to pin the hem ahead of time. It can save you time to roll the hem as you go. If you're working on a flag that has the hem allowance marked on the flag, that makes it really easy to roll as you go along on that hem with your machine. If you're working on a flag that does not have the hem allowance marked, but you're a confident seamstress and can eyeball that 1/4 inch measurement pretty well, go for it. That definitely saves you time. And if you keep a seam gauge handy, you can really check your work as you go. And tip number 5, if you're unsure and you're deciding whether to make the seams or hems a little wider or a little narrower in certain circumstances, go ahead and lean towards a narrower hem. That helps us to keep the flag size bigger overall. If you've ever heard of a scant 1/4 inch, that's kind of what I'm talking about here. If you don't know what that means, no worries, just stick to that 1/4 inch measurement and you'll be great. Number 6, my machine tries to eat the corners of the flag sometimes and they'll get kind of pulled under the plate. So I like to use little pieces of pattern paper or a sturdy tissue paper just on the corners to temporarily stabilize those as they go through my machine. After I finish that corner, I just carefully tear it away from the stitches, but I have found that that helps my machine not eat those corners. Thank you so much for helping us with this project. In no time, you're going to see these flags out on the field in the hands of our students, and you will know that you were instrumental in getting them out there. We really appreciate your help. Thanks.